He said the word legalized cheating, and he meant it. And it was a real conversation piece. We'll go over exactly what that means right after this. It's the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for tuning in. You can catch me right there at the Stephen Willis on Twitter. I would appreciate it. I commentate on all kinds of things, but there's some Ole Miss stuff on there as well for people that want Ole Miss information. Also, I do want to say I'd like to thank the LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want faster. Post your job for free at the linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Also, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notifications of when we put new videos up, which actually happens quite frequently, and of course, upvote the video itself. If you want to, comment down below in the comment section and start a conversation of what's going on. So, today was Lane Kiffin Day, Ole Miss Day at SEC Media Days, and we've been trying a little bit to get some video. We haven't been able to do it, but we're going to talk about it anyway. It was time to go and do what we need to do. So, Lane Kiffin used the phrase legalized cheating to describe NIL. And he didn't use it to describe NIL that way. That's probably something I shouldn't say. He didn't describe NIL as legalized cheating. He's describing the way that NIL is being used right now as legalized cheating. The inducements, everybody's talking NIL ahead of time, making all kinds of promises to which other people are seeing that these promises aren't being kept, which is going to lead into a flood in the transfer portal. And that's another way that Lane Kiffin is kind of smart right now. But that's kind of happening at the moment. But he described it as legalized cheating. And, I mean, that's really cool. He talked about how he's not wearing a tie, and that he compared that to Ole Miss. And I've said this several times. Ole Miss is doing things the way they do things because they have to. If you want to go inside the box and do things the way they've always been done, then Ole Miss is at disadvantage in the fact that it is not a talent-rich state. There are some good players, but the numbers aren't quite there. The Ole Miss is not a wealthy school, so NIL-wise, that's going to hurt them as well. So the way that Ole Miss does things and the way it's constructed and everything is a little bit outside the box. Or as Lane Kiffin said, we built our own box. And Ole Miss uses that as a way to try and compete and be elite. And this is a super important year for this theory, for this experiment. This is a year that will either go back and hit Lane Kiffin like it could like boomerang back on him, or it completely justified the theory that he had a few years ago when he decided to do this. It's a huge year. This is the year where everything happens that way. And like I said, we're not doing this because we want to. We're doing this because we have to. And you can see that other media are kind of attaching the stigma that Bill Snyder's K-State teams back at the turn of the century also had. They're doing that on these Lane Kiffin things. They want Lane Kiffin to be a cartoon character, to where everybody say, oh, he says things that we need to pay attention to and it's funny, but he'll never be that successful. The example of that is, look at this last thing when jobs came open all over the place. All of the major jobs came open at one time. Every one of them. Lane Kiffin was rumored for all of them, supposedly. Didn't get a whiff. Now, either Lane Kiffin is absolutely happy where he is now, or his reputation nationally is at the point where maybe those guys don't want to do that. They don't want the red flag that might come with a hiring Lane Kiffin. Either way, that's fine because he's going to stay in Oxford in that case, and he's going to be able to work to make Ole Miss a better program. And we're doing this through the transfer portal right now. We heard at the beginning of his speech today that Lane Kiffin talked over and over about the culture and having to institute the culture. This is kind of an important thing, and this is going to be the toughest test that they probably have. The culture that last year was just innate because Matt Corral was there and he's a super leader and all of that stuff, that it was already in place, has to be established this year. You have to teach Jaxson Dart, Michael Trigg, Jared Ivey, Kari Coleman, Troy Brown, Ladarius Tennyson, Mason Brooks, Malik Heath. I can go over and over again. Jordan Watkins, Jalen Robinson. All those guys have to learn what we do because they are all coming from different situations that have done things differently. What might be as an expectation with the Ole Miss program wasn't necessarily an expectation with the Georgia Tech program. It wasn't an expectation with the Auburn program. So that's what he means by there's some culture work that has to happen. And it has to happen pretty quick. Whenever we start practice, by the second or third week in August, they actually have to be pulling the rope in the same direction. You have to build it fairly quickly. Now, it helps. It really helps that most of those guys were here in the spring. But there's some Jalen Robinson. There's a Malik Heath. There's a Jonathan Cruz. Those guys did not get to go through spring. But the other guys, hopefully they started to ingrain that culture, and the work with Nick Savage and the strength and conditioning program can help these guys out because it's a unique situation. It's something that Ole Miss needs to take care of. It is probably, believe it or not, everybody's going to talk about everything that's going on, including me, by the way. But this culture thing is a big deal. Ole Miss needs a big personality that's willing to do this the right way that can influence other people. That's what they need. Matt Corral was that guy last year. We're not going to talk about exactly what Matt Corral did and all of that stuff because that's all subjective. But leadership-wise and making sure the team was going in the same direction, he absolutely did that. His big personality got people together and pulling the rope in the same direction. And it worked. And whenever he was not in the game or hurt, Ole Miss lost against Auburn. Ole Miss lost against Baylor. Out of the 3 losses in the season, there they are. The other one was Alabama. Now, it doesn't really matter if he gets hurt against Alabama. I think Alabama was winning that game either way. But he kind of, against Auburn, that's a game that Ole Miss probably should have won. Against Baylor, it's a game that if he stays in the game, Ole Miss probably wins that game. Those 2 games are the Auburn game especially, that could have had playoff implications. It's just really interesting to me. Last season was kind of fun of what all happened and the different storylines that happened in regards to Matt Corral and the Ole Miss offense and everything that they put together. Everybody talks about who they lost. And in the next segment of the show, I will bring something up that was also brought up in today's press conference, and that is the coordinators. And there's a whole bunch of people, like I said, they're laying the groundwork to doubt Ole Miss. So if Ole Miss wins, it's going to be weird because they didn't really do it the right way because of all these transfers. And if it goes poorly, they can say, I told you so. They are absolutely setting this up. So we're going to talk about the coordinator hires when we come back from this SEC Media Days edition of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. But right now, I do want to tell you about LinkedIn Talent Solutions. As the sun comes out on small businesses that are back in business, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier to grow your teams. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the people you want to interview faster and for free. Create a job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs, reach your network and beyond in the world's largest professional network of 810 million people. That's like a tenth of the world's population, by the way. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So this is what I want you to do. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, which NFL stars moved the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, that was today or yesterday, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcast and YouTube. Also, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including iTunes. Please do not forget to rate and review us on iTunes. You can say whatever you want to say. Just make sure it's a 5-star review. That'll help others find the show when they're searching for it on iTunes. So 5-star review, say whatever you want to say. That's as simple as that. Also, this week we have some guests that are going to be joining the show and talking about what's going on, including former players. I'll leave that as a surprise, but there's some questions that I want to ask, and one of them I was there when I worked there, and the other was a big time whenever I was visiting from high school and all that, and it was pretty cool. So I've always done the hero worship thing with Ole Miss football, but yeah, back in the mid '90s, it was pretty cool that this guy might have been there. Anyway, Ole Miss is replacing Jeff Lebby and DJ Durkin. Two fantastic football coaches. Not saying anything different. Two fantastic football coaches. But to outsiders that are looking to what's going on and do not understand what's going on, it's going to look more dire than it actually is. And everybody's like, Steve, what are you talking about? What's going on? Well, it is my opinion. I don't know if this is true, but this is what it looks like to me. That the replacement for Jeff Lebby was always Charlie Weiss Jr. In the same way that when Kendall Briles left FAU, the replacement was Charlie Weiss Jr. It's a familiarity with what they want to do. It's a tool in the tool belt. Maybe Lane Kiffin, when he went to Ole Miss, he wanted just somebody from that Baylor tree to install the offense, to get everything good to go. As you can see in that year one, that 2020 year, there was Jeff Lebby, there was Randy Clements, there was Joe John Finley. All three were on the staff. They were all three Baylor guys. They knew how to install that offense. They'd done it, especially the offensive lineman, especially the offensive coordinator, to get ready to go. But just like at FSU, after the first year when it's installed, they all just poof, they're gone. Same thing happened in both places. And my theory is there is some mechanics in the operation of this offense. Where to line up, where to hand the ball off to the official, to do stuff to go as fast as humanly possible, stuff that had been perfected at Baylor over the years. Well, at Ole Miss, whenever that happened, you could move on to what you want to do, because at its core, this is a hybrid offense. I tell people all the time, this is a hybrid offense that is let's say 90% Baylor. Early 2012, 2013, 2014 Baylor. That they run the ball. They're going to run the ball 65% of the time. They're going to go quickly as possible. They're going to repeat plays. Receivers aren't going to change sides of the field. Whenever a pass is called to complement the previous play, so they can go as fast as possible so you don't have to change over how it looks. But then there's a 10% Lane Kiffin shot play that's important for what this offense does. Because while this offense is similar to the Baylor offense, and I say all the time, I will say that it's a similar offense to the Baylor offense, it's not really. It's a hybrid offense. If you want to look at the difference, look at what Josh Heupel does at Tennessee and look at what Lane Kiffin does at Ole Miss. It's essentially from the same tree. Both of them are hybrids off of that Baylor system. Both of them are that way. But the offenses look really different. And this offense and what they do, the operation, the nuts and bolts of it, allows the team to go as quickly as possible. And I think that is one thing that Lane Kiffin wants to do. Plenty of tempo. This is going to be real fast. We're going to go. But he wanted the flexibility. And I think this is what he put together whenever he was at Alabama, started working. And then after he left Alabama, saw that the Baylor stuff was happening. And he was like, hey, I kind of like that as well. Let's mix those together. And they did that at FAU. And you have an offense that is increasingly flexible. Now, if you look back at the Lane Kiffin days at USC, and this is not a head coach at USC, when he was assistant with Pete Carroll. Offensive coordinator for a while there was Norm Chow. A lot of his offense looked like that Norm Chow offense. That's what he was doing. That's what he was comfortable doing. What I think has happened, a lot of the stuff that he did at USC, he was just able to rewrap it in this modern spread principle with uber tempo and all of that to make it a modern version of what was so successful when Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart was calling stuff back in the early 2000s. It might look like this Baylor system, but the trick is about this Baylor system, other than the tempo and the operation, Art Briles was a wishbone coach. They're going to be physical. They're going to run the ball. They want options. It's heavy on the RPO. And seeing that, Lane Kiffin was able to take that, integrate it into what he was doing, and now you have this offense that's just a little bit different. When Jeff Lebby runs the offense at Oklahoma, it's going to look different than it did at Ole Miss. When Kendall Briles runs the offense, it looks different than Ole Miss. And that is because Lane Kiffin is slowly making its own. Because he's run this now. This will be his 6th year in this system. It's officially his. This hybrid is the Lane Kiffin offense. So whenever I need to probably quit calling it the Baylor offense whenever you do it, because in totality, it is the Lane Kiffin offense. It's just really cool. It's just really, really cool. And I just genuinely like it, and it's basically, it's taken offense to a place where I absolutely want it to be. Now the defense, I'm ready for the defense to kind of catch up a little bit, and it's starting to. This John Haycock drop 8 stuff, it is absolutely starting to. But we'll see what happens. So anyway, I want to tell you real quick about BetOnline. You can see down below, Ole Miss is favored over Troy by 21.5 points in Week 1. BetOnline is your #1 source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest news development, league reviews, and news, including this year's playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn all about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, hit the bell for notifications whenever we release a new video. And, of course, upvote the video itself. If we hit 2,000 subscribers before Troy, that's about 6-7 weeks away, we will be doing a post-game or a pregame show. That'll be pretty cool. So subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you have, tell a friend. If you do that, we get to 2,000 subscriptions by the Troy game. That's before the Troy game. We will do a pregame show. Anyway, one last thing from Lane Kiffin's SEC Media Days. And it was essentially a throwaway question from the crowd. But I told y'all, we're going to talk about the quarterback competition just about every day from Monday all the way until about the third game of the season, whenever they name, until about Georgia Tech. And one of the questions was, what kind of offense or whatever for Jaxson Dart for him to be successful in Ole Miss's offense with Matt Corral leaving? So it was something like that. And Lane Kiffin, was brilliant in that he forcibly put Luke Altmyer in the equation because you are not going to sway this one way or another. I call this quarterback competition the opposite of 2015. In that, in 2015, we were told that Ryan Buchanan and Devontae Kincaid and Chad Kelly was in a quarterback competition. It was complete BS. And Chad Kelly had that turned into Ole Miss went to the Sugar Bowl. Well, on this one, when Lane Kiffin says quarterback competition, all of the media immediately assumes complete BS. And they ask questions just about Jaxson Dart. And there's everything about the hype of this kid. And the hype is real with him. He, like I said, he's a good player. When everything goes smoothly, his ceiling is higher than it is for Luke Altmyer. His floor is also a lot lower. And when you're dealing with all these players in the transfer portal, it's why I say it's one thing to be talented, it's another thing to be good, because there is some roster building, there's some team building that is going to happen. Whenever we talk in the first segment about cultural stuff, that's what we mean. Whenever I talk about it's one thing to be talented, it's another thing to be good, stuff like that matters. So, all of the media asking questions just singularly about Jaxson Dart and what he's going to do and why is he going to be the quarterback. And the SEC Network talking about Jaxson Dart might be a transfer player to break out. And that is absolutely true. All of this stuff could happen. But it discounts another scenario to where Jaxson Dart doesn't even see the field. It discounts Luke Altmyer. And Greg McElroy was absolutely right that Luke Altmyer was thrust into an impossible situation after Matt Corral played for like 5 snaps in the Sugar Bowl, threw a touchdown pass, looked adequate for the preparation he got as a true freshman. It's like everybody forgets what David Morris looked like when he had to play against State in '98. It's like everybody forgets what that looks like. Luke Altmyer did an all right job. There was some stuff they did that he put in and looked pretty good against a really good defense. There was a lot of dudes drafted off that defense. So, after that game, with Ole Miss ended up losing, I think, 21-7. And there were a couple of missed field goals away from even probably still winning that game with Luke Altmyer. Everybody talks about Matt Corral getting hurt in that game. The thing that really hurt Ole Miss was Caden Costa being suspended and us having to go to a backup, and we ended up missing 2 kicks because It was going to be 13-7 in the fourth quarter, Ole Miss winning. And after the second missed field goal, that, like I said, they missed one early on and they missed one later that would have put them up 10-7. After he missed that, Baylor went down and broke the dam. The defense couldn't hold up anymore. And they were close, even with a true freshman quarterback, even with Luke Altmyer. But as Greg McElroy puts it, people just started discounting Luke Altmyer because of that game. They don't see the positives that he did and what can be built on. They just saw that he threw an interception. Very reductive, very simplistic quarterback judging that people can sometimes do. And a lot of times people that don't know what they're seeing are going to be the loudest. It's like they make up for lack of knowledge with volume. And so they'll just chant a chorus of, he's not ready. And no, you couldn't possibly know that. And after the spring practice, Luke Altmyer did what he had to do and kept that gap about the same with Jaxson Dart. And after the spring game, Luke Altmyer did exactly what he needed to do. He needed to take chances because it was a completely harmless situation. And he still was at about 50%. Here's the fact. If he wanted to be Will Rogers and throw check down after check down after check down, he could have been 20 for 23, 130 yards, and a touchdown or two. He absolutely could have done it. But he took the opportunity to take chances, which is what he needed to do. The thing we needed to see from Jaxson Dart was the opposite, because his reputation as a gunslinger coming into the Ole Miss offense was apparent. So we needed to see Jaxson Dart throw those checkdowns to the running backs over and over to the tight end instead of just, ducking and chucking the ball downfield. That didn't really happen. And the nightmare day became the worst day for Jaxson Dart, and the same people that started giving up on Luke Altmyer after the Sugar Bowl started giving up on Jaxson Dart after the spring game. Even though I tell you all the time, you cannot judge anything schematically from a spring game, period. It's not designed to. As soon as it started getting televised, nothing constructive can be pulled from that. So we have a competition, a genuine competition, a real competition, to where these kids are going to come out and fight. And Jaxson Dart is going to come in and be more comfortable, and he's going to lead. And like I said, when it looks smooth, it looks really good. Luke Altmyer is going to come through and try and build off what he did in the spring. Maybe he can start to be a little bit more aggressive downfield. He'll be a little bit better. He's seen it all before. And the winner of this in 6 weeks, 7 weeks, whenever they decide, is going to be the guy that makes the team better. That's the reason I say do not root for a quarterback. Just root for a quarterback. Don't root for the person. Just hope that they find somebody. Because somebody, if they actually win the job, will actually make Ole Miss better. So, hope everybody's fun. I've got interviews this week, like Big Game Boomer. I'm going to interview him as well. And also Todd Wade and Shay Hodge coming up, being interviewed this week. So that should be a lot of fun. I think tomorrow I'm interviewing Todd Wade. So it should be a lot of fun to do that. But anyway, SEC Media Days went about as well as it could go. It was about as non-confrontational as it could be. Ole Miss has just turned into an upper-tier SEC team at this. But you do see that the media is starting to turn on how we are doing things. It's either going to be, well, they can't do it the other way, and we're relying on all these transfers, or I told you so, you couldn't rely on all these transfers. It's just the fact of the matter. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. We will catch you tomorrow. We will, like I said, put interviews up, do stuff. Whenever something interesting happens during SEC Media Days, we'll try and grab that video and go just like we did with the Greg Sankey video. But until tomorrow, peace.